the Awaken Your Ego podcast with Joanne and Ariana. We are a health podcast that explores topics to do with biohacking and self-discovery.
We are also on the self-discovery journey, and we want to attract listeners that are doing the same in order to help them realize they're not alone.
Ego differs from conventional medical spas and wellness centers. We believe that the secret to maximizing one's sense of self is in addressing the entire person, inside and out. We provide state-of-the-art aesthetic treatments as well as lifestyle management and holistic health solutions. We aim to please with our efficient and friendly customer service and guarantee with our scientifically proven alternative therapies and lifestyle optimizations that every patient will leave our care with a boosted ego. Our goal is to help our patients realize the necessity of self-care and to encourage them to prioritize their health and wellness goals. When we make self-care and confidence a priority, then we're able to bring to light our potential for happiness and growth. This podcast is a way to expand our reach so that we are able to spread the word on the importance of self, the whole self, inside and out.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. Please reach out to your medical provider if you have questions about any of the treatments we discuss to see if it's a right fit for you. Now on to our show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Ego podcast. We are so excited to have Sven Erlandson here with us, aka the Badass Counselor. So welcome, Sven.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yes. So Ariana's just going to get into his bio so we can get a little bit of background information before we start.
Yes. All right. So very few spiritual leaders have lived a life so unusual as Sven Erlandson. He has experienced what most counselors and leaders only read about in books. Yet, it is precisely this odd life, this incredible dash to live fully, learn all the wisdom the universe has to offer, and then give his life in service of others that makes Sven such a brilliant, insightful, funny, and powerful speaker, writer, and spiritual counselor. He has been to hell and found his way out to find true and lasting peace, power, purpose, fulfillment, happiness, and the enduring passion to help others find the same. He's born in North Dakota, raised in Minnesota. Sven is the author of 6 books and has been published in major newspapers, international journals, and magazines. He attended college at the U.S. Air Force and graduate school in Berkeley, California, and obtained a Master of Divinity degree and Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies and Mathematics. He's obtained multiple advanced counseling certifications. He has 20 plus years experience in private practice as a spiritual counselor, and at one point was an NCAA strength and conditioning coach, record-setting powerlifter, adjunct lecturer at the graduate and undergraduate levels, and has ministered to many. He currently has a clinic and is a well-renowned podcast entitled Badass Counseling. Sven offers spiritual counseling that helps clients unlock the voice of God, God's universe, soul, the higher power inside them so that they can begin to live their truth and finally experience happiness and true aliveness. Quite the bio. You've
Very
lived a lot of life.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure if we were to hear you guys' bios, it'd be even more impressive.
I don't know. I don't know if mine's as impressive.
I'm still on my way, okay? I'm building my resume.
Fair enough.
So why don't you give us a little bit of background? Like, what started your journey of self-discovery?
Well, I mean, I came from parents my father was a pastor and my mother had been a director of education within church settings, and she raised 6 basically sons. I have one sister, but she considered herself one of the boys. So I sort of grew up in a sort of spiritual environment. It wasn't overtly, excessively religious. It was just cool. And but then in my teens, all of my siblings were gone. I was the youngest. And so every night at dinner, for whatever reason, when I was growing up, my mom had taught me everything. I mean, and dad too, they taught me how to garden. Mom taught me how to cook and sew. I can sew on a cam sewing machine and darn my own socks and all that shit. And so I think she just figured, well, all the other kids are gone. I'll just teach you one of the other things I know. And she was a suicide hotline specialist and had a counseling practice of her own, soul counseling. And so she just started teaching me how to listen. I know that sounds weird, but she taught me, active listening techniques, passive listening techniques. All right, Sven, in what your father just said, what was the primary premise? What was the point he was making that he didn't say? What was coming through in his nonverbal language? She was teaching me all this stuff. I was 13, 14, 15 years old. I didn't know why I was learning it. And I don't think she even knew, except you're going to learn this next. And I never, ever aspired to go into counseling. It was never on my radar. I never aspired to write books. My mom had started me journaling when I was 13 or 14 years old because she knew I had a lot of stuff inside of me, but as any kid does. And she knew that was an effective tool for her. And so she wanted me to do it. And I got hooked. And so I was just always in the practice of expressing myself through writing to myself, getting out my feelings. Oh, she broke up with me. I'm so sad. Oh, fuck her. I'm better than her. And gosh, I miss her. And she was so pretty. I'll never have somebody that pretty again. Flushing out everything. Right. And then I went to the Air Force Academy to become a pilot. And I got about halfway through there and I realized this isn't for me. And my grades were fine and everything. It's just, I just felt called in a new direction. One thing led to another before you know it. In studies to become a pastor. And then I started developing counseling practice. And it's actually been over 30 years because that started back in my 20s. And I was writing all this time. And then some of my articles came out in my late 20s. Because I had something I wanted to say and I thought others might benefit from it. And then before you know it, one thing leads to the next. And then life just sort of tumbles along. But the thing is when you're doing a path that isn't like prescribed, like, okay, I'm going to come out of college, I'm going to get that corporate job, I'm going to go work, and then I'm going to get the advancement, and then I'm going to make fun. When you're not going on a prescribed path, every single person around you that doesn't understand what you're going to do is going to offer their 2 cents. Mm-hmm. And the ones closest to us are often the most critical, the ones we love the most, whether it's parents, siblings, or I was married at the age of 22. And so I was eating shit from one of my brothers I was closest to, my wife's stepdad, and then, society at large, and as well as my wife. And it's just like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing this. But I was just listening to my sort of inner GPS. And I was eating a lot of shit from a lot of people who wanted me to be normal. And so it's easy to look back on that biography that you just read and think, wow, that's really cool and everything. But when you're in it, oh man, you're eating shit all the time. Everybody's got a fucking opinion. But I was just following 2 things. One, not just following the things that sort of breathed life into me and that I wanted to go after, but also I was having the courage to say no to the things that didn't breathe life into me. And see, that's where the rubber hits the road. I always tell clients or when I'm speaking, I tell people the path to discovering who you are requires discovering who you're not. Mm-hmm. And then having the courage to say no to that. But that includes relationships. That includes friendships. That includes geographies. I had a client once who said, and she had been a very, very successful model, very successful back in the 80s and 90s. And she had developed a bit of a problem, whatever. And because of that, her body was very susceptible to climate, to temperatures. And she was living in a northern state and the cold temperatures would just kill her. Her pain shot up to, a 10 out of a 1 out of 10. And she'd live in that state, but she couldn't quite move yet because of some responsibilities that she was involved in. But she had the courage to say no. And all of her family of origin was up there and go move to the South because she needed it for her. It's those no's. It's those no's really that define us and sort of set our path in life even more than the things that we say yes to. So I guess what I'm saying is that, my path, it is my path, and I've loved that I've taken that path. But what it really boils down to, and this is the message for any one of us, especially people in their 20s or 30s, do you have the courage to say no to the things that don't breathe life into you? Do you have the courage to end a relationship knowing you might eat shit? Do you have the courage to go against what your family or your friends might say you should be doing? And that's what's going to determine whether or not you have joy in life, whether or not you have the success that you dream of, or the joy, go after the aspirations. It's whether or not you have the ability to endure people's wrath or walk away from people when you say no to the things they want you to say yes to. Does that make any sense?
I love that. Yeah. And I feel like lately I've been thinking about that concept of like things that we do in the name of love, right? Like you're saying, oh, my mom wants me to, my husband wants me to, oh, my kids need this, at the expense of ourselves. And I feel like I've been kind of pondering that a lot, or like, what are things that I do that are self-sacrificing, but good intent, right? It's to help other people or to get approval from other people. And it's like, how do I stop doing things in the name of love and just be very intentional, you know?
That's exact, and that is exactly right. How do I stop? And the answer to that, I always tell people, if you're ever trying to figure out why someone's doing something that doesn't make sense, or why I'm doing something that doesn't make sense to me, always ask yourself the question, what's the primary fear driving the behavior? And then speculate, write out a list of potential answers, and then go with the biggest, scariest one. Whatever is the scariest one, that's what you're afraid of. So in a case where I'm engaging in actions, and I've been married twice, I'm in a relationship now that I've been in for 10 years. It's wonderful, but I'm in my mid to late 50s. So it's like, I'm an old dude. But, I went through a divorce in my 20s. I went through a divorce in my 30s. And so when it comes to any relationship where we're in, and it could be a friend relationship, could be a work relationship, anytime we're engaged in behaviors where I'm doing it for the other person, or gosh, why do I always make these decisions out of love, or what, and it bites me in the ass later, always ask yourself, what's the fear? So then let me put it to you, Ariana. Mm-hmm. Let me put it to you. If you were to speculate in this thing that you've been sort of ruminating over for the last few weeks, what do you think is the fear operating inside of you that causes you to do what other people want versus maybe what feels right to you? What, if you were to boil it down to one sentence or less, what really is the fear? If I don't do this for them, then what?
Then I'm unlovable. Then I'm not worthy. Then I'm not worthy of existing. It's like, if I'm not serving others and doing things for others, because in my childhood, that's where I felt worthwhile, because I grew up in a big family like you. There were 6 of us. And I had a mom, very overwhelmed. She had a lot on her plate, obviously. So I was the oldest daughter, and I was like, oh, I got to step up. I need to be a little mini mom, and I need to keep giving, because if I keep taking things off her plate, surely she'll have enough love and time to kind of boomerang back my way. And when it never boomeranged back my way, I was just like, oh, I guess I just have to keep operating and keep working. Then I enter a relationship where I think that's my role as well. I just need to keep giving and make things so much easier for everyone, so they have all the time and effort and energy in the world to boomerang back and give it back to me. But people aren't wired like that. It's like, so, and then I'm sitting here upset and resentful because I'm depleted and I'm not taking care of myself. And at the end of it, it's all my fault. It's because I think I'm doing the right thing, but I'm sacrificing myself.
And it's the notion that if I'm not, because I said, what's the fear? If you don't, then what? And you said, then I'm not lovable. Then I'm not worthy. In other words, I need to get what I hear you saying. And you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't mind being wrong. What I hear you saying is, if I'm not getting that love, then in return, I must not be lovable. Mm-hmm. Now think about that. Those are 2 different things. It's one thing if I'm not getting love, but your brain is translating it into, I must not be lovable. If I'm not getting that external validation, that external gift of a kind word or a hug, or gosh, you're such a good helper, or somebody doing something nice. If I'm not getting that from someone, I must not be lovable, versus I'm not getting that love from that person. Oh, that sucks and that hurts and that makes me sad. But that doesn't necessarily have to translate into, therefore, I'm unlovable. But that's what a child's mind does. So to some degree, your brain is still thinking as it did when you were a child, where it's like, if I'm not helping mom out, mom's not giving me love. And when a child isn't getting love, guess what a child's brain does? It makes a very simple transition. And it makes sense logically. And we even do it as adults, that if I'm not getting love, there must be something wrong with me.
100%.
Right. But the truth is, there was never anything wrong with you, Ariana. There was never anything wrong with you. You came out of the womb, and you were 1, and you were 2, and you were 4, as this beautiful, smart, creative, feisty, fun little, happy, laughter-filled, tear-filled girl. There was never anything wrong with you. But the child's brain, if it's not getting love, converts it into, I must be bad. There must be something wrong with me, when in fact, there never was anything wrong with you. Isn't that interesting how it works?
It's amazing that thought process. And even I think a lot of it, not to dwell on this, but my family was very religious growing up. And so doing charity and service outside of the home was always important, always on the docket. And I think seeing the hypocrisy of it, like, wow, you have energy to give to these random people that you hardly know. But when I'm at home being a big helper and trying to, like, make your life easier, there's nothing left in the tank for your kids. And so it left me feeling like I must be the exception. I'm the weirdo that doesn't get love and happiness and joy. I don't get to have fun. I need to be a slave to the bigger picture, right? The family, the unit. It's like I'm the one that's going to keep it going forward. But I never expected the kindness and love to kind of come back my way. And I thought, like you said, it must be me,
And so then what do we do in adulthood? Because we're, in our 20s, and we're all knuckleheads in our 20s, guys, girls, non-binaries, we're all idiots in our 20s, right? And we're all living this sort of deliberate life. I mean, we're doing our best, right? But the bottom line is, what do we then choose in our relationships, our friendships, but especially our lover relationships? We don't really even choose. We just sort of naturally float into that which is familiar.
100%.
You were conditioned to believe, oh, this is love. Okay, this is love. And so if someone's ignoring me or not giving back to me, oh shit, I know how to play this hand. I totally can do this. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you actually want, but boy, is it familiar. And you play that hand and you play that hand until 5, 10, 20 years down the road. It's like, fuck this. This sucks ass. I don't want this. And we realize that what I was conditioned to believe love is ain't love. And that's why people miss red flags too. I mean, think about it. If you were conditioned to believe that basically your needs don't matter and you have to give this much in order to give this much, what I talk about in my book, a relationship camel, you can go a long way on just a little bit of love, a little bit of water in your hump. Just give me a little bit. I'll give you everything. All right. Well, if you've been conditioned to believe that, then when you get into a dating situation, let's just say randomly, and when you're 24 and you get into a dating situation and you're giving this much and this person doesn't text you during the whole day, even though you know damn well a text takes 4 seconds to send.
I loved that stuff. It felt familiar.
And so you're missing the red flags. Wait, this person isn't texting me back. Or when they don't apologize for their actions. Well, mom never apologized for her actions. So of course you're not expecting an apology for what was done to you. Well, shit, that's a red flag. Somebody who doesn't apologize for when they've hurt you or hurt me if I'm in the relationship, somebody who doesn't apologize, huge red flag. But it doesn't even register as a red flag because it's been normal my whole fucking life. Exactly. So now we see the power in that little example that you very candidly put out there and trusted us with that piece of your story. We see very, very simply how the problems really start way back there. And that if we don't go back to and not just get out the pain and the fears that we encountered back then, but the bullshit beliefs we were taught about ourselves. See, you were taught that you only have value when you're hustling, when you're doing all this work, when you're give. And if you're not doing that, you're unlovable. Well, that's a bullshit belief. That child was wonderful before she did one fucking thing, just for being who you were, Ariana, and you too, Joanne, just for being who you were. That child is wonderful. My brother's wife, she has been a neonatal nurse for 30, 35 years. Right? She works with the preemies and she's worked with conjoined twins and she works with children who are born missing this or they have a tail or whatever it is. And she falls in love with every single one of them. She says, Sven, these babies are so beautiful. And somebody could ask the question, wait, somebody born with, half their cranium missing is beautiful? Oh my God. And she just falls in love. So a testament to the fact that every child is good. Every child is good. So if I come to 35, or if I come to 47 or 68 years old, and I think I'm bad, or I'm not good enough, or no one's going to love me, then you got to ask the question, where the fuck did that come from? Who inserted a lie into me when I was this little kid who had a hair lip and had to take some special classes, or I had a hearing problem, or who injected the lie that I'm not good enough? And just one more thought on that, and that's this. There are people who will say, well, society did it, or the bullies at school did it, or, that's where you got the message. It wasn't your parents. But here's my response. I ran into an old classmate from high school. And this old classmate had been very much one of the most picked on people in our school. And I ran into him at a funeral of a classmate of ours. And I walked up to him, and I'll just make up a name. I'll just call him Bill. And I walked up to Bill and I said, Bill, how are you? And we caught up and so on and so forth. And I said, Bill, I'm going to be really honest. I'm glad I'm seeing you now. I haven't seen you in 30 whatever years. I want to apologize for how I treated you, because I was a bit of a bully, or I was, a big bully, and I'm sorry. And you were mistreated in our class. And Bill said, Sven, I really appreciate that. But you actually weren't one of the worst, but thank you anyway. And he said, but Sven, can I tell you something? I said, yeah, what? He said, when I was about 4, I come from a big family, and I was the youngest. And my older sister, she had just gotten her driver's license, and she was pulling into the driveway, and it was a total accident. She didn't see me because we had a pine tree there, and she hit me with the car coming in a bit too fast into the driveway. And I had to be rushed to the hospital and so on and so forth. And I was all right, no permanent damage, anything like that. But the amount of guilt that my sister felt was immense. And so every day after that, in my home, of all of us kids, 7 or 8 kids, whatever the hell the number was, he said, I was treated like an absolute prince. She always made sure all of my older siblings were kind to me. I always ate first at dinner time when we're, sitting around all watching TV. He made sure I got the best, or she made sure I got the best spot. I was treated like a prince. I said, that's fascinating. And he said, yeah. So Sven, even though I was probably the most picked on person in our school, it rolled off me like water off a duck's back, because I was getting this powerful message at home that I was beautiful, and that I was wonderful, and that I was so important. Now think about that in terms of counter messaging. Mm-hmm. The single most picked on person in our school, it didn't even affect him, because this powerful message he was getting at home. So it's not society, it's not friends that have the biggest impact. It's what's going on in the home. What are the messages the child is getting? And just as a sequel to that story, he said, Sven, it came to my 18th birthday. And once I turned 18, my father slammed his hand down and he said, all right, to my sister, all right, enough. All right. Any debt you owed him, you have more than paid. He's now just a normal citizen of this family, which is kind of a cute ending. But the point is the power of counter messaging. Mm-hmm. And the power of what the hell is the message? And it's not often explicit. It's usually implicit. What are the messages we're getting in our home, that we got in our home, that imprinted on my sense of value and mattering? Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah, totally. Of course.
I love that. That's a very powerful story. And I think you're right. And it's funny because even as a parent, and I have two little ones, she has a child as well. It's like, you're always wondering, am I doing the right thing? Like, what trauma am I causing and not seeing? And I think it's encouraging to hear you say the impact of a home and how you're being treated at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a sequel, sort of, but on a different story, when my siblings and I were in our 20s, and we weren't all in our 20s at the same time, but roughly in our 20s, each of our parents came to us individually and said, and I'll use the metaphor that I use in my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. Every time that we hurt someone, it's like we've taken a stone and we've put it in a big burlap sack on their back. So every time a child is getting hurt or getting a negative message about themselves, it's like another stone is getting put on that burlap sack. So you can come into your 20s with a 500-pound bag of rocks on your back. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, especially from the parents, because very often it's unintentional, the shit that we do as parents. And I have 2 kids, they're 29 and 32. But when we're in our 20s, my parents each came to us and they said, basically, give me my rocks back. I want to know what I've done to hurt you. And I need you to know that I'm going to listen. And you can let it out. And I just want to hear it, because I don't want you carrying around rocks that I put there.
Yeah.
Follow up. And so they acknowledge every parent makes mistakes. And I know I made mistakes. So let's talk about it so that you're not having to carry the fruit of my mistakes 10, 20 years ago. But so often as parents, ego gets in there, doesn't it? Yes. And so much of my identity as a parent is I'm a good parent. But yeah, that may be true. But even good parents make mistakes, painful mistakes. And here's the follow-up even further. My mom did that again in her 80s. She came back to each of us kids individually. And then she did it in her final year of life, just 2 years ago. She was 93, and she reached out to every single one of her kids and our spouses, for those who are still married. And she said, if there's anything at all, I don't want you carrying it when I'm dead. if there's anything I've done, please get it out and let me take it with me to the grave. I can take it. I can take it. Just let me have it back. And so it's that deliberateness of not just in the moment of how is my parenting and self-assessing, but it's later being willing to own shit that I didn't see or shit that child experienced, even though it was totally not on my fucking radar.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that ownership later and that willing to accept.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I feel like I'm sure Joanne's parents, but also mine, I think, and even other people I've talked to, I feel like separating that ego and just being able to say, like, I'm sorry for the pain I caused, even though it was unintentional. I know I still caused trauma, and it doesn't mean that they're any less of a person or that they did a bad job. How do you get clients to kind of change that mind frame?
Well, I tell you what, it's the people I get coming to me very often are the ones who are the kid of a parent, and the kid maybe 50. I just got off the line with a client who's 51, and we're discussing issues regarding his parents. Don't even ask me how many times that is the theme. And what it requires is a willingness. One of the questions I ask them, because just like you, Ariana, when we were talking about the messages you got from way back there, every single one of my clients, that's the message. We have to go back to those messages and assess what they were. And they have to have a willingness to look at their parent other than how they've been conditioned to look at their parent. And it's like, well, I can't think bad of my parent. It's my parents. Or in my culture, Sven, we don't question our parents. What my parents did was good. Or, you know what, Sven, I understand because, after mom died, dad did his best. And so I don't have any animus towards but that's not the point. That's not helping you heal. You have to be willing to give yourself permission to look at that, because that child still experienced it. Whether you can understand it now as an adult or not isn't the point. The point is that child still experienced that pain. And where I really get, where I get people is that once we start talking about their parents, it naturally weaves in. They start thinking about their own parenting.
Yeah.
And nothing will break a person down more than looking at their own parenting. But what's fascinating is some people are willing to look at, how I failed as a parent, and gee, I'm failing my son George, or I'm feeling little Susie, or whatever. But they refuse to look at how their parent really fucking failed them.
Yeah.
That it's easier to blame myself. And what that means is that somewhere in that childhood conditioning, my client got the message, it's not okay to question mom and dad. And they're still doing it even now. Yeah. But I have some different questions that I go through with my clients, very deep, powerful questions, to begin to get a lot more of that out and to elicit, what the real truths are. And one of the fascinating things is I'll often ask the question after I've determined what some of the things were that the parent, well-meaning as they may have been, did to my client. Then and once we can sort of determine, holy shit, they really fucking hurt me in a lot of ways. Yes, they did their best, blah, blah, blah. That's not the fucking point. They inflicted pain. But then I ask this question, what makes you more mad? Is it that your parent hurt you in those ways in the past? Or is it that they, to this day, think they were a good parent? Now, I get different answers, but a lot of times what tans people's hide is that my mom still thinks she's a good mom, even though she was absent and I was having to raise my younger siblings, or even though she would routinely beat me and mock me in front of other people, or whatever it is. She, to this day, thinks she's a good parent. Now, that's where we start cracking open that childhood, but that's also then in these questions, that's where people begin to really assess their own parenting and sort of some of the holy shit of their own parenting, but also of their own past. Because that's where all the answers are. It's all back there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the tools that you suggest some of your clients use for that self-reflection and evaluation of either their personal relationships or themselves?
I require every single new client that is going to work with me. I have a couple of things that I require. One of them is an autobiography. I require that they write no more than 10 pages. I used to let it go however long they wanted, but no more than 10 pages of their life story. And then they have to submit that to me. That has to be to me at least a week before our first session. I then read that and study it, and it'll be all marked up with questions. And I have it color coded. I have yellow highlighter, I have orange highlighter, and then I have my green pen. And then if I get my red pen, now we're in the really, really hardcore stuff. And so it's all prioritized when I'm going in, and I don't charge my clients for that. So that's 2 or 3 hours of my time that I've already dedicated to them. So it's a show of good faith, but it also, more importantly for me, it means that once they enter my office, and all my clients are by Zoom now because everybody's around the world, whatever. But once they enter my office, we hit the ground running right fucking now, because I already know their story. And so and my first session with any client is between 4 and 6 hours. It's usually 6 hours because that's what I push for, but no less than 4. And so by the end of that fucking session, they've already gone places they've never fucking gone before. And there's already things happening. And so what are some of those exercises? 1, the autobiography. Well, how is that an exercise? 1, because for a lot of people, they've never put their own story onto paper. You can't even imagine the number of people I have who say, I'll ask them, so what was it like writing the autobiography? I'll usually open with that question. Oh my God, I've never put my story out there. And as I'm writing, I'm like, God, what a pathetic piece of shit I am that I treat my wife this way. Or, oh my God, Sven, I'm so embarrassed of my life. And, and oh my God, I never realized how horrible my father was in his alcoholism. Just putting it out there, that's a fucking exercise. And when we put something out in front of us, remember, my mom taught me to journal when I was 13. When we put it out there, it's like we see it. We're experiencing it now as an observer, rather than I'm in it experiencing it. And then the other thing that I require before anyone can get a session with me is I require that they read half to 2/3 of my last book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. Why? Because I need to sell books? No, I don't fucking care. If they can't afford it, I'll fucking give it to them for free. It's because 80% of my counseling method is in there, and it's just chock full of exercises and assignments. Almost every single chapter has different assignments. And I know these work, and I know they work because I was in a 12-year suicidal depression in my 20s and into my 30s. And I couldn't find a therapist who could fucking help me. I read about 1,000 books in self-help and psychology and theology and spirituality and philosophy, all sorts of books, trying to find answers, trying to find methods to get myself the fuck out of it. I even attempted suicide. I've got the 9-inch scars up my arms to prove it. All right. So this isn't bullshit. My stuff in my books, it's literally worked on me. These are literally tools I either used in the past or still use today. And I've been using them on clients for 30 years. So this is the real shit. This isn't a book shit. This is live. And so I require that. So again, when we hit the ground running, I know how committed they are to this process. They're already down halfway deep, ready to go all the way. And so as another example of, I was actually going to bring it up earlier, Ariana, when you were talking about, what you were taught about yourself and some of the values sort of that you've been thinking about and so forth. One of the very simple exercises I give to clients, and it's in the book, is I want you to make a list. Just take one piece of paper and just draw a line down the middle. And then on the left, write mom and dad's values. And then just list any fucking thing that you recall them telling you was one of their values, or that just got transmitted. Oh, always save for a rainy day, or the world sucks and people are pigs, or any of their values. Always make sure the lawn is mowed, because because Johnson next door always has his lawn mowed. And so, as trivial as that may seem, always have the lawn mowed. That's one more value. Everything I say, from the big important shit down to the minute, most incidental shit, list all of your parents' values. Now, come over to this column and write at the top my values. And then take that value and say, is that my value? Mm-hmm. And don't just say yes or no, but then next to it, I want you to put in parentheses the percentage. What percent is always save for a rainy day? What percent is that one of my values? Am I maniacal about it? 100% always save. I just save. I never spend a fucking penny. Or is it, maybe that's 20% my values. Okay, so now what you're doing, as you're listing the values that were pushed upon you, or that I only, to your point, Ariana, that I only have value if I'm giving this much. Right? And just getting a little bit, that's the only time is that actually my value? Do I actually believe that that's true, that that's how you should live? Is that one of my values? Well, fuck, no. I mean, maybe let's just say 40%. Okay. What you're doing now is you're asking yourself this fundamental question. And the percentage part is the most important part of that exercise. It's not just yes or no. But what you're doing in this one exercise, to your point, what are the exercises to do? And you're wrestling with the question, and it's an incredibly pivotal question. Is it possible that my parents' values are different from my values? Boy, that question alone means I am not just their clone. I don't just have to do what they said. Wait a minute, I'm a fucking adult. Are those actually my? No, they're not. Holy shit. No wonder I'm so fucking miserable. I'm living someone else's values when those aren't even my values. But what that requires, and this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, what that requires is the willingness to say no to those values, or to not take it as a 70% value, but make it a 20% value. In other words, where we find ourselves again in life, the path to discovering who you are requires discovering who you're not. It requires the courage to say no. Now you can be aware, oh shit, I don't have that same value to the same degree mom and dad do. But then you got to execute it. Mm-hmm. So some people are aware of who they are, but the next step is, do we have the courage to put out here, rather than just keeping it in, do you have the courage to put out here who you are, knowing it's going to come at a price? Knowing mom or dad or brother or society or best friend or lover is going to fucking potentially attack it. And I am of the absolute belief that nothing kills dreams. Nothing kills happiness more than it's not the fear of the unknown. It's not the fear of failure. It's not the fear of death. I believe what kills happiness more than anything else is the fear of the known. I know you're looking at me thinking, what the fuck is this idiot talking about? And it's simply this. It's the fear of, once you know what you truly want in life, it's the fear of actually putting it out, taking it out from inside of me and putting it out there. Why? Because I know exactly what my brother will say, or I know exactly what my best friend will say, or I know exactly what my coworkers will say. And that's so fucking scary, because you've been eating shit your whole fucking life when you put your own feelings or wants or needs out there, that it's so fucking painful, so sensitized, it's so fucking PSD shit. There's no fucking way I'm putting it out there. Yes, it's what I really want, but I don't want to do it because it hurts so much. That's what kills happiness. And so what it requires then, once again, is the healing of all that shit from the past, so that I can just courageously become on the outside who I really am on the inside. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
totally. And I think, and even to the specific example that we've been talking about, I think for me, I've had to check myself. Like, do I want to do this because I'm a good girl and they're going to like me for it? Or do I want to do this because I would do it regardless? It's the right thing to do. And it's like being very intentional with that giving and that service, because the last thing I want is to be full of resentment. If I want to show love, I don't want to have to resent you or have this like conditional love of wanting something in return, because I'm just going to piss myself off. It's like being uber intentional about what I am allowing and what I'm doing.
And what was the experience in your life? Because that is not an insight of a 25-year-old woman. That's an insight of a woman who's gone a couple more trips around the block. What was the experience that caused you to begin to see life that way? I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to live on somebody else's agenda. What fundamentally for you was the tripwire? What was the experience that caused you to begin to see life differently?
Marriage. No, but I'm 34, but I've been in a relationship for about 11 years. And I think it was like, the more I loved myself and started to realize my worth and my power, the more I was able to start communicating my needs and desires. Because before, I didn't think that was a thing. Like, I'm not supposed to ask for help or say what I want. Right. And so we finally got to a point where I'm like, hey, I want to be happy. I know I'm allowed to be happy. I know it's possible for me to actually receive love and feel loved. I'm just having trouble doing this. And so it was almost like having that moment where I'm like, wow, I really need to rewrite the contract that our marriage kind of signed up for in the beginning. It was this very codependent, me giving, him receiving all the time. And he was this black hole of affection. And I'm like, I want it to feel more equal. I want to respect you and not feel like I need to mother you. I want, to know that you can do things for me and I should be able to receive it. And that's okay, So I feel like there was a lot of random little things, but it's been actually very recently that I was like, hold on, we got to do it different. And I know that's not what you signed up for. And if that's not okay with you, I can handle that. But I can't keep living this way and not feel upset or frustrated. And I want to respect you.
That's it. And it's interesting. I put up a video recently on social. And I put it up on TikTok and Instagram and all the ones that I'm on. And it's basically the difference between happy and unhappy people in relationships, more than anything else, boils down to one question. And that is, what is their definition of strength? And I know that sounds weird. What the hell does strength have to do as such a huge thing in happiness in a relationship? It's simply this, and it goes to the heart of what you literally just said. It's simply this, that I have found over 30 years of counseling people, and in my own fucking life too, that the people in the camp of unhappy in relationships define strength as the ability to take it. I can take it. I can do it. Oh, I can endure some more. Oh, I can endure more. Oh, it's no big deal. Don't worry about what I want. Oh, I can take it. I can take it. They define strength as how much can I take, versus people in the happy camp in relationships define strength by the willingness, the courage to say, no, this doesn't feel good. No, this isn't okay. That my feelings matter. My wants, my needs, my expectations matter too. I'm not just going to, whereas people over here in the unhappy camp, it's like, no, whatever you want. It's all about your needs, your wants, your feelings. And then maybe you'll give me a little bit of love in return, right? But at these over here, it's, the strength means having the courage to express my feelings, my wants, my needs, and not back down. And see, you just said that. You just said that. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but this is what I need. And if you're not okay with it, well, fuck off. Then I guess we'll go our different ways or whatever. I know I'm sort of putting words in your mouth there, but that's really what you're saying. That's the difference. How do you define strength? And not only that, is sort of in conjunction with that is very often people's strength gets in the way of their happiness. Oh, I can endure more. And you keep taking it and keep taking it. Sure, you're strong, but fuck, you're killing your happiness. You're killing your relationship. And at some point, because we're so terrified that if I put my wants out there and don't back down, if I put my needs out there, you may not like me. You may walk away. And so strength really, and I've talked about this before in some talks that I've done, also in videos and so forth, and that is, and I list it as sort of a woman's superpower, but it's any gender or non-gender. And a woman's superpower, because I've worked with so many women who are so terrified of being alone. Terrified. And if you're terrified of being alone, guess what you're going to do? You're going to stay in relationships that are shit, or you are going to eat shit, or you are going to endure shit because you're so terrified of them walking away. Why? It's not just them walking away. They're back, walking away from you that you're terrified of. What you're really terrified of, and this goes right back to what we talked about at the beginning, is what happens inside of you when you're alone. All those voices come rising up, don't they? See, I'm no good. See, I'm unlovable. See, this confirms it. But when that person is here, next to me, the mere fact that they're here confirms that I must be lovable. Otherwise, why would they stay? I may be eating shit. They may be taking all my money and punching me in the face and abusing our kids, but at least my worth is confirmed. So do you see how a woman's superpower, a person's superpower, is the ability to be alone, to wrestle with and get out all those demons that are attacking you from within, so that you can be alone and not be afraid of it. Because then when you're in the relationship, you won't be afraid of being alone, and you'll just stand up for yourself. Oh, you want to leave me because I actually want to be apologized to? You want to leave me because I actually have emotional or sexual or financial needs too? You want to leave me for that? Okay, have a nice day and fuck off, and so, but it's that willingness. And so often, if we grew up with our worth being tied to, getting love from someone else and earning that love, then we're going to stay in the shittiest of relationships. So I applaud you for standing up for who you are and your needs. That's huge.
Oh, thank you. And I think me and Joanne both have been on a journey of doing a lot of different inner work. And I think it was being very willing to be aware of the good, bad, and ugly of myself, like the things that I do intentionally and unintentionally, like subconscious. And I think it was realizing from my childhood that I was loving very conditionally. It's like I was serving, but I kept waiting for it to come back. And that's not the kind of love I want to give. I'm like, I want to be an unconditional loving person and be able to give and leave it up to them to either be that person to show me love back or not. I don't want to have to feel like I'm craving it or desiring it. It's like, that's not the reason to give, is just to get.
Well, no, it's not. That's true. Agreed. But nonetheless, what you fundamentally said to your husband by standing up and saying, hey, I need my needs met, is that my love is conditional. Not my feelings per se. I feel love for you, but who gives a shit? My wanting to give and give and give, and all you're going to do is take and take and take, what I call extreme takers. That's not okay. I'm not okay with that anymore. I'm not just going to give indiscriminately if all you're going to do is take. I need you to give as well. No, that's not saying that your fundamental motivation is just to get. No, there's a joy in giving. Yeah. But as I construe the world, and other people are different, they would see it differently. I'm not going to keep investing in someone that's not investing back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, totally.
And I will go, and I've been in a relationship with a woman for 10 years. I make her coffee every single morning. I take her little yippy bark, bark, bark dogs that drive me nuts out every morning to go to the bathroom in my yard and all this shit. And, and I do what I can to take care of her and so on and so forth. And guess what? In her ways, she goes way the hell out of her way to take care of me and to, put up with, my, being neurotic and cranky when I'm hungry or when I'm tired and this and that and the other thing. And so when you're in a relationship where the other person, you can't outgive the other person, now that's a love relationship. Mm-hmm. And those are the people we want to get closer and closer and closer to. And it's not always a lover. Sometimes it's a best friend. Sometimes it's a family member. But if you're just give, an extreme giver, and the other person's just an extreme taker, fuck that shit. Yeah. Fuck that shit.
When it changes the want to a need. It's like, well, no, you really need me to do this to feel validated. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's a duty now. That's mm-hmm. not fun. That's not optional. It's like, oh shoot. Now it just doesn't feel like even happy love. It feels like, oh, you're expecting me to serve you in these ways. And I have to keep showing up and there's pressure. And I'm like, this is not, mm-hmm. this is not
very well said. Well said.
So I feel like that kind of ties into having courage, like how you said. And I wanted to ask, what would you say are the non-negotiables when it comes to having that courage or that strength in yourself when it comes to relationships?
You have to do enough work of getting all the shit out from your past, because all that shit, and I'm getting to your question, okay? All that shit from your past gets packed. Those messages that you're not creative, smart, wonderful, happy, laughter-filled, tear-filled, wonderful person. Any message that goes counter to that has to be extracted. You want to know why? Because all those cruddy messages get packed on top of your authentic self, rising up from within you. And so the more you get those out, the more your authentic self can come up. And once you're tuned into your authentic self, what you're tuned into really is, and I know this is going to sound so simplistic, but when it really boils down to it, this is what it is. What feels good to you? What gives you energy? And what sucks your energy out of you? What doesn't feel good? But see, you won't know until you get that crud out of there. You're responding to what feels good, what doesn't feel good based on what you're conditioned to believe about yourself. We already talked about one. If you're conditioned to believe you got to give this much love, well, then somebody not apologizing to you, you're not even going to notice that. But what if you got all those messages out of you that say, oh, you're no good, you're unlovable. And then you realize your authentic self, wait, it kind of sucks. It hurts when you don't apologize when you hurt my feelings, Joanna. It's just like, that hurts me. Oh, so then the courage comes in responding to, acting on that which is hurting me or that which is sucking the energy out of me. And so what precedes even the decision of being courageous is the awareness of, well, who the hell am I and what is actually hurting me? Because so often, if we've been tuned into a parent's values, we're going to be tuned into our lover's values. And then my own feelings of what hurts me get sort of packed down. And I don't even know who I am or what hurts me. So the idea of being courageous, it comes after identifying who I am. But I can't because all that crud's on it. So you get the crud out, then your authentic self rises up. And you know what? The more you get those messages out of you that you were taught about yourself, the mere act of getting those messages out, the underlying message is, I matter. No, the real me matters. I'm sick of it. To your point, Ariana, I'm sick of this shit. The real me matters. That's you taking out some of those old voices that say, no, you don't matter. You don't matter, Ariana. No, fuck you. You don't matter. Well, you're getting that out. And by the mere fact of getting it out, You're saying, I do matter. Okay. Well, now then, if you're starting to believe I do matter, then when your own natural desires or when things hurt you, when those rise up from within, well, I matter too. You're going to be more likely to act on it because you've already been acting on this belief that I matter. So in terms of having the courage, it really first requires having an awareness of who you are. And, the Buddhists talk about this all the time. I'm not Buddhist, but I'll fucking steal from anybody. And, they talk about that everything changes once awareness starts. And not just awareness of what's going on around you, but awareness of what's going on inside of me, of what feels right to me, what resonates with who I really am. Or is this just some crap I've been taught about myself? And so the more we become aware of who we really are, the more that courage just naturally follows. But what it really requires is this, in the end, what's going to keep you from expressing your truth, going after your greatest dreams, or standing up to someone in a relationship, or living your life your way, is you have a vision of what you want. You have a feel of what would breathe energy and life into you. But it's scary, right? It's scary because what's Susie going to say, or what's my brother going to say, or what if I fail, or whatever. And so what a lot of people do is, if this is the vision they have for their life, they'll go tick, 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 and they'll go this way because it's not as scary, because it's safer. Or they'll go tick, 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 tick. They'll go 180 degrees in the opposite direction because that was too scary. Because what if this went wrong, or what if that happened? Oh, I couldn't handle it. Okay. So it boils down to, as we look at what we really want for the marriage, for our parenting, for our career, what our vision really is, and all those fears come up, it's being able to flush all of those fears out, even though they're still there. But it boils down to a question of fear versus trust. What's going to make the difference in you going after what it is you want in life, whether it's finances, whether it's career, whether it's love, whatever it is, what's going to make the difference is, do you have the ability to trust that no matter what happens, I'll be okay? That even if I fail, I'll be okay. See, so many people overthink, right? I plenty of clients who are overthinkers, or so many people look at their dream and they think about all the fears, and then they, as we said, they change a course. So in other words, their fear is driving the equation, and fear and happiness are inversely correlated. The more you have of one, the less you have of the other. And so what it requires is, in overthinking or in staying focused on the fears, the assumption is, if that fear happened, or if this fear over here happened, or if this fear over here happened, and you sort of game it out in your head, what's the worst thing that could happen? And if that happened, I won't be okay. It would be a fate worse than death. I couldn't handle my family thinking I'm a loser, or I couldn't handle whatever it might be. I couldn't handle if I get diagnosed with cancer. I couldn't handle if my kid didn't like me. And so what it really requires then is going inside of that. And I will literally ask clients this question. So if I'm clear, this dream that you want to go after, we'll just use career as a simple one. If you were to go after this career and you were to fail, it would be a fate worse than death, and you couldn't handle it. So you would literally put a gun in your mouth. Is that correct? I literally say that to clients. And then they'll say, very often, well, no, I wouldn't do that. Oh, well, what would you do? You'd probably grieve, right? Grieve the loss, grieve the failure, and it would hurt a lot of that. And they say, yeah, of course. I said, but why not kill yourself? If you couldn't handle it, wouldn't you then kill yourself? They say, no, I mean, it's not that. I mean, yeah, I'll eventually be okay. There we go. Mm-hmm. But when it's going on up here, when it's just churning and churning and churning, we are convinced that if X, Y, or Z were to happen, I won't be okay. And so we pull back, we go tick, 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 tick. We go 48 degrees away from our dream rather than the full dream, because we're convinced I wouldn't be able to handle it. Once you can game out your worst case scenarios and begin to ask yourself, would I be okay though anyway? Would I, grieve and flush out the pain and the humiliation and all that, and, journal all that shit out of me? But then would I get up and go back about the business of life? Well, yeah, I would. Exactly. And see, this is never more true than in parenting. Yeah. So many parents, especially nowadays, so many parents are terrified at the thought of their child not liking them. one of the questions I used to ask of the other coaches back when I was an NCAA strength coach, and I would counsel the other coaches. And one of the questions I used to like to ask was simply this: what percentage do you want to be respected by your team? And what percentage do you want to be liked by your team? Is it 80-20? Is it 15-85? 27-73? What percentage? What's the breakdown there? And every coach had a different answer. There's no right or wrong answer. But what I found fascinating was the percentage. So let's just say randomly, the percentage let's say one of the coaches says, and some of them said this, I want to be 60% respected by my athletes and 40% liked. Do you know what I discovered? Every single coach that I worked with, the percentage that they wanted to be respected was identical to their winning percentage. That means if they 60% wanted to be respected, they won 6 out of 10 games. Wow. And they could never quite cross over that threshold. What that implies isn't anything about respect per se. It's about the wanting to be liked. That wanting to be liked is standing in the way of them increasing their winning percentage. I had one of the coaches who had won 10, 12 national championships. Do you want to know what the percentage was that he wanted to be liked? I think he said it was like 2% or 5%. He said, because, I got to go in to meet their parents. I can't be a total fuck nut. And so what's my point? What I used to say to these coaches, and I'm bringing it back to parenting here in a second. What I used to say to these coaches is simply this: those athletes don't exist to meet your needs to be liked. You're using them to fill your own love cup when you exist to draw out their greatness. Your wife or your husband or your lover or your buddies or your fellow coaches or me, the strength coach, or whomever, those people exist to meet your needs. You exist to meet your team's needs. Well, it goes back to parenting now. So I set that story up with a lot of my clients. If we're having parenting issues or if I sense there's shit that needs to be looked at, and I'll say, what percentage do you want to be liked by your kids? Well, now it's a different question, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because now I'm asking, oh shit, Sven. Wow, I 40% want to be liked by my kids, or I 70%, or I even 25%. And I tell them, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It simply means that you are using your kids to pour love into your love cup. Which means if you need them to like you, you're going to pull back from the hard decisions. You're fundamentally using them. And don't even ask me how many marriages I see go like this, split, because, let's say traditionally, the husband has fallen in love with his career and the wife has fallen in love with the kids. And she's getting all of her needs for affection met by little Billy and little Susie. And Steve, the husband, is feeling left out because what about my affection needs? Of course, she's feeling left out of feeling like a human being. She's not out in the world. She's just defined as a mom. So there's problems on both sides, but that's not the point. The point is, are you, as a parent, I have to ask myself the same question. I'm a parent. Am I using my children to get my own needs met? Needs for affection, needs for attention, need to be thought of as good. And the way we can manipulate language with children to say, oh, come give mommy a hug. Or do you love dad? You love your daddy, don't you? Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. So it's very easy. And I'm not going to put you guys on the spot and ask you what percentage you want to be liked by your kid. This is your show. I don't want to embarrass you or anything like that. But it's a powerful fucking question, isn't it? Mm-hmm. What percentage am I using my kids? Do I need my children to like me? I had a client like 20 years ago, and she said, oh, Sven, I admit, I go to my daughter for advice, and, she's, the center of my world and all this. And I said, wait, how old's your daughter? And she said, 11. I said, you go to an 11-year-old for advice, like life advice and like your life and financial decisions and friendship and, your stuff. And she says, yeah. I said, okay, that needs to stop like fucking 10 years ago. Yeah. Right. But that need for approval and I don't have a friend and so on and so forth. So this notion of how much is my desire to be liked impacting my decisions, and will I be okay if my child doesn't like me? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. or yells at me, I hate you. Go ahead.
Well, no, that reminds me, because I feel like even when talking to my parents or even observing people that are older and have older children, I just feel like I've realized a lot of parents take too much pride in the success of their children and they take too much sorrow in the mishaps of their children. And it's like, they're an individual, dude. This is not a reflection on you as a parent or your parenting style. It's like they get to keep all of it. They get to keep all the pride of their success. They get to keep all the grief of their mistakes. So why are you making it a point of validation of like, oh, I was an awesome parent. Look at my child. They're doing great things. Yeah. And it's like, those are so uncorrelated.
You're so right. And yet it's so hard, especially like in those teen years and those early 20s where you want to influence them and so on and so forth, or you're sitting in the stands at their sporting event or at their orchestra concert or whatever. And that's my Billy. That's my Billy. Go Billy. That's my boy. That's my boy. Or, my Susie or whatever. And you're so right though. But it's so hard. And so what it really requires then is particularly around those ages of 11, 12, 13 years old to begin. And some parents start earlier, and I'm actually an advocate of that. But to begin to each day take half a step, just half a step out of that child's insides. See, when our children are young, it's like when we're born, each of us has a computer chip inside of us, so to speak. And that is imprinted on what kind of flowers you're going to like when you're 10, what kind of flowers you're going to like when you're 44, what color your hair is going to be when you're 19, what color your hair is going to be when you're 69. Okay. All of this is imprinted on that chip. But what do we do when children are young? To a large degree, we disconnect the wires from their chip and put them into our chip. Always look both ways before crossing. Be nice to old people. Study hard. Save for a rainy day, right? But what so many parents don't do in that age, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, when a child is beginning to what we call individuate or differentiate or become their self and identify themselves not strictly in relationship to the parent, but peers and self in the world, we don't de-wire the child from my chip and begin to give them their wires back. We keep them wired in. Why? Because, well, the control is great. Plus, I'm getting my needs met and I feel important. And who the fuck am I if I'm not a fucking parent? Or I'm doing it for your own good, Billy. I'm going to take away these decisions. I had a client several years ago, and young guy, about 25, and he had almost gotten a girl pregnant. And, the condom broke and then took the, after whatever pill and so on and so forth, but he was still worried. And his mother said to him, because he was anxious about it and so on and so forth. This was just in the days after it. And his mother said to him, if she's pregnant, you are having that child. I will support you, but you are having that child. And, my client comes into me and he was convinced if this woman is still pregnant, I'm going to have this child. I said, really? Because your mom said so? I mean, you can. I don't fucking care. It doesn't affect my life. It's your life. Live it your way. But what does it say about your own sense of self that she says it and you're going to do it? Mm-hmm. Are those actually your values? And so it gets into this notion of, again, it gets back to always the same questions. Who the hell am I really? And where do the lines end? But it's so hard as a parent to give half a step out, to give them one more wire back each day, to give them the power to make their own decisions. We don't want them to see them fall flat on their face. We don't want to see them get hurt because that hurts us as parents. But that's how we fucking learn. They've got to begin to trust their own voice and succeed on their own voice and fail on their own voice. When my daughter was 13, my son too, I said, I want you to start dating. I want you to start dating because I wanted my children in the sort of laboratory of the teenage years when they're surrounded by people they know, a consistent life. I wanted them to learn what it's like to hold hands with someone the very first time. Do you remember the first time you held hands with somebody you were attracted to? How powerful that was. Just the rush of emotions. I wanted them to experience their first kiss. I wanted them to have the experience of someone breaking up with them that they really, really liked. I wanted them to get their fucking heart ripped out. I wanted them to have the experience of really liking someone, but breaking up with them because it just didn't feel right anymore. I wanted them to go through the misery of a breakup, 3 months of crying, and then waking up one day and discovering, holy shit, the sun is shining again. I wanted them to have, and to have the experience of then finding someone new 6 months or a year later and having an even better relationship that's better suited to who I've become. I wanted them to have all these experiences in the laboratory of the teen years. I wanted them to fall flat on their face in sports and music and these things. Why? So they're not living in San Diego at age 22 when they've gone off to live and have their first job and they're going through their first fucking heartbreak. And right when they're supposed to be flying at full wingspan and their life is taking off, they're going through this experience of never having been broken up from before because daddy wouldn't let them fucking date. And now that's weighing them down from the inside. when they should be, going after their dreams and starting life over or starting life anew. Yeah. Right? So I want them to get the reps, the repetitions early and young so that they realize life doesn't end if somebody leaves me, or to realize, new love always comes, or to have had those first flushes of experience, or to learn, as my mother did, teaching me to journal and flush out my feelings, to know then by the time I'm out in the world that just because I'm feeling something doesn't mean I have to act on it, flush out my emotions so that I'm making my decisions from a place of center rather than this flush of anger or this flush of sadness or this flush of fear. And so it's, as parents, one of the hardest things, and I agree with you when you say that, the child doesn't exist to make me proud or whatever. It's hard as a parent. It is hard. And the older they get, especially in those teens and 20s, it's hard to let go because so much of my own identity is wrapped up in that child. And that's where being a deliberate parent means isn't just how I parent this child, but it's, am I looking at my own shit and what's really going on inside of me that I'm trying to sort of coax my kid to do this, extracurricular activity or go to that college or not go to college. What's going on inside of me that I'm even subtly, and it's so easy. You guys know with kids, it's so easy to manipulate kids. I mean, come on, it's simple, right? It can be so subtle. What's going on inside of me? What need is going unmet or what fear is operating that's causing me to nudge my kid or whatever. And so that's why great parenting requires constantly doing shit on myself and examining my motives and where are my fears operating in my parenting of my kids.
No, I love that information you shared because I'm definitely that anxious parent. I'm not going to tell you the percentage that I would love my child to love me, but it's pretty up there. But I wanted to ask, is there anything that you currently struggle with that you're working on right now?
Oh, shit. No, I'm not laughing at the question. I'm just laughing at how much time do you have? Oh, I'm constantly. And it's funny because, since sort of everything taking off globally, I've written all these books and I've had the counseling practice, but once social media, and that just came out of the blue 10 years ago, whatever, since that happened, it's just like now, people recognize me, I don't know them and shit like that. And Karen, my girlfriend, is always telling me, Sven, you can't keep flipping people off on the street. You can't keep yelling at people, Sven. You're such a dick when you drive, because I get fucking worked up. And I know that seems like a trivial example, but that's one. Okay. Another one. What am I still working on? Oh, fucking body issues. Fuck. I grew up, as an athlete and shit like that. I am the most vain motherfucker. I work out hard and heavy in the gym. Why? Because I like looking good. Because I like walking in a room and having people look at me. So fucking vain. So I'm working on that. What else am I working on? Looking in a mirror and seeing, the wrinkles, which isn't as big a deal for me, but there's that. What else am I working on? Now, one of the things I'm working on is as the career gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's just like, fuck, I barely was able to squeeze in a workout this morning. I work out 1 day a week for 4 hours and I can barely even work that in. Okay. So I'm working on timing. What really are my priorities? And I'm working on, I have 5 older siblings. And every time I'm around them, I find myself wondering how much of what's going on inside of me is because I still want my brother Dan's approval or whatever. So I'm working on family shit. Now, granted, have I gotten the giant boulders out? And have I, I've been doing this shit since I was fucking really my deliberate soul spiritual life started when I was 19, going inside of myself and getting out shit and discovering who I am. But the shit never ends. I have instances come up from my past that I'll wake up at like 3 a.m. I get up, go to the bathroom, right? Because I had too many gin and tonics. And I wake up and I go to the bathroom and I'm walking to the bathroom and I'm like, oh God, oh fuck. Some random memory from like when I was in college and said this fucking stupid ass thing, or I did something that absolutely humiliated someone I cared about or whatever, and I get embarrassed. And it's 30 years after the fact. That person probably long forgot about it, or maybe they've passed away and it's like, oh, cringe. So I'm still cleaning out the crud from my love cup. It's not the big stuff, but there's always new stuff. So I'm tangling with that. Plus, here's another one. Shit I'm dealing with. Courage. Do you know how hard it is to sit inside of a session, counseling someone and interrupt them, knowing that they're going to feel like they're not being heard, right? So I tell them in advance, but to interrupt someone when they're telling a story, why? Because I know where I need to go. You claim you want to be healed. You want results. I know how to get you there, but it means I'm going to have to interrupt you some of these times, or to look someone in the eye and say, listen, I'm not calling you a bad person. I'm not scolding you or whatever, but we really need to rethink how you're going about your parenting of your 9-year-old. And again, you don't have to you don't have to do what I say, and I'm not really even saying anything, but let's look at it. To take someone's parenting, and it requires such ginger steps to tread gently, but to have the courage, because so much of the identity gets wrapped up in that young parent's parenting. And so I'm constantly dealing with courage, because I have to keep in my brain, Sven, the goal is to heal kindly, gently, for the most part. Sometimes you got to be a little tough, but the courage to say what needs to be said, and shit like that. So always like, oh my God, and sexuality. I mean, Christ Almighty. Let me tell you this: I lost my virginity. It was outside in New Brighton, Minnesota. My best friend Dave. We had gone to the drive-in at 100 Twin Drive-In, and his girlfriend was there, who lived in New Brighton, and we lived in Fridley. And she had a friend in from out of state. We'll just say Montana. And so we're calling her Montana all night. We didn't know her fucking name. I'm sure we did, but whatever. Boys being boys. And then Minnesota, back in the fucking 80s, nobody had air conditioning, not in our blue collar neighborhoods. So his girlfriend said, well, you guys come on over, because, they had a outdoor porch that was screened in, so no mosquitoes, because that's our state bird in Minnesota, or when I used to live there. Anyway, so we went over there, and he's in his bed with his girlfriend, and I'm in bed with Montana, right? And lose my virginity there. It was quite unremarkable. But hold on. And the first thing that happens when I'm done, my best friend and his girlfriend start giggling, and he says, Sven, slow down. So what that means is literally not my first sexual encounter. I dated plenty of girls before that, and had sexual, experiences, but never coitus, never sexual intercourse. The very first time I had sexual intercourse, I'm getting fucking laughed at. Nice. Then in some significant relationships I was in later on, you know how you get in a heated fight and you say shit you fucking wish you hadn't said, or you say some really hurtful shit. I had some very hurtful shit said about my ding-a-ling. And so even today, to age 56, I still have some insecurities that I'm constantly looking at and finding new wrinkles about it, about my sexual performance, which is a lot of guys, the whole notion of performance, but also about my sexual construction. Yeah. And so it's like, am I still dealing with shit? Fuck, let me tell you, how much time do you got? Get yourself a bourbon over at my bar and come on, let's talk about it all. Yeah, no, it's never done. You're never there. It's, are you learning the tools and exercising, using the tools to get out the pain and the fears and the bullshit beliefs you were taught about yourself? In that case, the bullshit belief I was taught about myself came from my best friend. Okay, but it's getting those out and working them. So it's about learning the tools, having the tools, using the tools, and then constantly going in when new stimulus gets stuck into your love cup, going in and cleaning it out. So we're never there. Yeah, you're never there. It's just this journey, and part of the journey is and part of the joy, crazy as it sounds, is just working through the shit and realizing, oh, I have something more I can heal. Oh, I'm getting worked up. What's going on? All right, something new I can grow through and change and so forth. So yeah, I mean, Christ, I've got more shit I'm working on than you do.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people have a misconception, like, oh, when I get to a certain plateau, surely I'll be done and I can just coast. And it's like, that ain't it. And I think even with my husband, he's working through his stuff as I'm working through my stuff. And the other day he was like, gosh, I'm just like tired. Like, I wish I could just feel like everything's cool. Let's coast. And I'm like, you got to change that mindset, because that I don't have a feeling I'm ever going to get there.
Well, and that's great. I love a couple of things that you said there. One, that I'm tired. Yes, that it's going to get harder before it gets better. Now, that period of how long it's going to be harder doesn't have to last a long time. You know, I get my clients turned around. People don't want results 5 years from now or 2 years from now. They want results now. And so the way I work with clients is we work very, very hard, very, very fast. And I try to have them off my tit in, 3, 4, 5 months, right? I'll work with them longer if they want. But if it takes longer than that, then either they're not opening up or I'm not doing my job. But here's the other thing. Yes, we never get there. That's absolutely true. But on the other hand, we do get to a very different place. And it's the biggest rocks. There's always going to be some rocks in that burlap sack on your back, but it's getting out the biggest ones. If you got a 500-pound bag of rocks on your back, getting out 50 pounds you're not going to fucking feel it. But if you get out 250 pounds, if you get throughout 350 pounds, out of a 500-pound bag of rocks in your back, you're going to feel it. You're going to have more and more energy the more shit you get out of there. You're going to have greater clarity. You're going to have a greater sense of calm and peace inside. Is there always going to be new shit? Sure. You want to know why? Because your dog is going to die someday, and you are going to be sad. Because your child is going to need surgery someday, and you're going to be fearful. Because you may go through a divorce, or your parent is going to die. And you're going to go through the grieving or the guilt that I'm not grieving or the happiness that they're down. You're going to go through so much shit because that's part of life. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's always going to be stuff that we're working on. But in terms of getting out so much of that crud, particularly stuff from the past, especially those messages, absolutely life changes. And you will know. And if you're not experiencing those massive life changes yet, you haven't gone deep enough. And there will reach a point where it'll just become methodical. It's like working out. You know, I mean, if you're 100 pounds overweight and you're going to the gym, those are the people I respect the most. We're 100 pounds overweight, 200 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight, and they're in the gym. And maybe they're not working as hard as, you know, some other people, but they're fucking there. Right. And the more that they make that part of their life and make that, and they burn off 25, then they burn off 50, then they burn off 65, then they burn off 85 or 100. Well, now it's become a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And the more you make that part of your lifestyle, the lighter you become, the greater peace you have. Right. Even when, you know what, I went on a retreat or I went, on a fishing trip with my buddies for a week and all I did was eat. And now I put 10 pounds back on. Oh, shit. But you know what? I've taken it off before. I know how to take it off again. Well, it's the same way with that inner stuff. Your doggy is going to die. And yes, that's going to knock you over and you're going to bawl because you love that little fucker. Right. But you've gone through pains before that now you know you have those tools for getting the crud out of your love cup and getting back to a place of lightness and a sense of intuition and a sense of aliveness. So it does change. We're never fully there, but there is a way, there are tools to get so there that I'm very different from who I was when I still had those messages in me, such as you said at the very beginning, Ariana, such as, gee, I'm only lovable when I'm giving. Well, shit, imagine how much happier you'll be if you actually got that belief out of you and realized, no, I love me just the way I am. I'm actually lovable, not because of what I do, but just because I'm being. Oh, that's kind of fucking revolutionary. And that changes everything. That's just one fucking thing. So you're right. We are never there yet. On the other hand, the more work we do, the more everything starts to change for the better.
Oh, totally. So I'm going to throw you a curveball just because I'm interested.
All right.
What are your powerlifting records?
Okay, fair enough.
My dad was a powerlifter, and if I didn't ask, I feel like he'd be upset.
I was still a competitive powerlifter before I started playing Division I football. I was a competitive powerlifter at the age of 16, and I set state records in the state of Missouri. I was living in Minnesota, but I went down and lifted with my cousin James. And I set at 16, and this is long before creatine ever came around. So I'm 16, that's 1983, 82, 83, somewhere in there. And I set state records in deadlift, and I deadlifted at age 16, no creatine, mind you, 505.25. So 505 pounds, 0.25. In the squat, my squat was 415 at age 16, no creatine. And my overall total lift was 1123 or something. All three of those were state records at the time. Of course, then I graduated from high school. I go on to be a Division I athlete. And so the competitive powerlifting got left on the wayside. So I didn't competitively powerlift as an adult, but that's when I became then an NCAA strength coach and the pastor and all the other shit.
All the other shit. Yeah. All right, perfect. Well, we should wrap this up soon. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but thank you so much for popping on. And I want you to know, I really admire what you do and how you teach other people. I've followed you for a while, and I'm grateful that you. Gosh, I'm getting emotional. But no, I'm grateful that you're willing to give us some time and to share so vulnerably. I really admire that, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah, no, you've given us a lot of gems today. I wanted to ask, how would clients find you? What is your website? What is your program?
Thank you for asking. The website is badasscounseling.com. badasscounseling.com. And you can find me on most of the major social media platforms, Twitter, TikTok, Insta, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Also as badasscounseling.com. I'm not a real original thinker, so I just keep using the same thing over and over again. And the name of the podcast is the Badass Counseling Show, and it just started less than a year ago. And this month, we will be going over 1 million downloads in just under a year. And so it's very exciting. And it's not like other podcasts. I don't
It's very entertaining. I feel like you cover a lot.
Okay. Yeah, we have 2 different formats. Our Sunday shows are lightning rounds where I'm just rapid fire answering people's questions. And then the Thursday shows are where I'm actually counseling people, because I had a wrestling coach in high school and he would always take us down to the University of Minnesota on Saturdays and Sundays to watch the University of Minnesota wrestling team wrestle. And he said, the reason we're doing this is because we learn by watching. And so I do these counseling shows, one, because I'm just trying to fucking help people, but also we learn by watching, or in this case, listening. By listening to how someone else is dealing with things, or listening to what their questions are, or what they're struggling with, or hearing a different way of addressing that. Maybe it's something I bring up, or maybe it's something that the person I'm counseling says. We learn. And so it's sort of, it's really raw and it's really real. I mean, if you listen, and we've had everything on the show, abuse and military and children and this and that and the other thing. And it's real people doing, and we're getting down and dirty in it. Anyway, so that's the Badass Counseling Show. But everything can be found at badasscounseling.com. And we actually just started. I haven't done these since I've sort of gone, whatever on social media. We're doing group counseling now, where it's all on Zooms and Zooms. Yeah. It's all on Zoom. And that's one of the new things we're getting into. We're going up on Spotify soon. We'll have a channel there. And it's crazy. And I tell you, part of the reason that I still come on podcasts and stuff like that, and is because I didn't get breaks. I didn't have a lot of people helping me out when, my books, I was writing these books and they weren't selling, back in my 20s, my 30s and shit like that. And so I believe that you two have a voice. You have a unique understanding. You have your own experiences to the degree you have the courage to express your own experiences and to learn from them. And you guys out there, putting it out there, trying to help the world, fuck, I support that shit every day of the week. So I'm grateful for you guys out there, because you guys can reach people that I can't reach, because you have different experiences and you have your own different takes on it. So in truth, and I'm not blowing sunshine up your ass, I mean it very sincerely, I'm grateful for what you guys are doing, because we're all trying to, as my parents used to say, brighten the corner where you are. And so I'm grateful for what you guys are doing, and I'm grateful that you had me on your show to talk and to sort of learn from each other.
Yeah, no, thank you. We appreciate it, and we know our listeners will too.
All right. Well, thank you. That's a wrap. But yeah, it was great to meet you and kind of talk a little bit, and appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Great to be on your show. And I hope you guys, I hate to be a cliche, have a kick-ass day.
Yes, we will. See, I was waiting for that.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Awaken Your Ego, a podcast that explores biohacking and self-discovery. We hope you follow us on Instagram and Facebook to stay up to date on what we're working on in your area.